Thank you so much for joining the Rank Prize Funds this evening for our 26th presentation of prizes. It's wonderful to see everyone here on our 50th anniversary, and it's wonderful to be out of the doom-zoom world for this evening. I would like to welcome our prize winners who have made some epic journeys to be here, and also to welcome Professor Peter Knight, who has very kindly stepped in to present prizes this evening. I had hoped and expected to welcome Professor Adrian Smith, the President of the Royal Society, to award the prizes, but he has sadly succumbed to a positive LFT and is unable to attend. However, welcome Sir Peter, and we all wish Sir Adrian a speedy recovery. Whilst it's a joy to see so many familiar faces at these awards, there is sadly one notable absence, and that is John Selborne, our brilliant chairman for over 40 years, who was instrumental in the establishing of the prizes in the 1970s and guiding our work so successfully. He sadly died in 2021, and this is the first opportunity for us to recognise his immense contribution, not only to the work of the Rank Prize Funds, but also to wider scientific research and public policy. As such, the Rank Prize is establishing an award in his memory. John was always a strong advocate of our efforts in supporting early career researchers. So we are setting up a John Selborne PhD studentship to be awarded in alternate years between the nutrition and optoelectronics teams. And through this, I hope that we recognise his great support to the funds. And we will hopefully see one of these recipients in the future go on to receive a Rank Prize. As ever, the selection of the prize winners has been a demanding challenge, and I would like to say thank you to both our academic committees for their inspired selection tonight. I would also like to thank them in their perseverance during COVID, with virtual symposia and COVID support and return to research grants. Without their dedication and hard work, our support to research could not be fulfilled. With the change from our usual scheduled January event, not all could be here, but I would like to record our thanks for their outstanding support. I would also like to pay tribute to our small executive team who've worked so hard to keep the programmes running and to move the date of this prize giving to this balmy July summer evening. Moving our prize giving was almost as precedent-breaking as moving the Queen's birthday parade for the Platinum Jubilee, and I've had one or two comments from our scientific teams about changing the dates. Sadly, to add to our joys, Sam and Philip are also LFT positive and cannot be here today. We wish them a speedy recovery and also a heartfelt thanks to Betty, whose constitution has been more resilient and who's done so well today. My grandfather was a great believer that a picture, or in his case, a moving picture, could paint 1,000 words. So we have commissioned a short film that I hope summarises the work of the first 50 years and sets the context for the next 50 of the prizes. I will not dwell here on his vision and his legacy, but merely beat the gong of filmmaking with our film. My grandfather was a tremendous character. He was inspiring, he was larger than life in many ways. He never really saw or accepted boundaries to what he could achieve, and he would always experiment. And a host of times my father, looking in despair, as he said, well, I want to try it this way, or I want to look in doing it that way. And I think that's why he set up the Rank Prize. It was there for scientific research. And he realised there'd be no future without experimentation, without research, breaking boundaries, pushing new frontiers in science. The Rank Prize Funds are incredibly well endowed, but when you look at global research, corporate research, and the development of science. They possibly don't compete with the applied science end of this spectrum. So Lord Selborne, when he took over as chairman, was visionary in thinking that the most important part that we could contribute to is to pure research, to the blue skies thinking of science, to pushing the boundaries of what science can offer. Sometimes they don't lead anywhere, but sometimes they lead into applied science. And it was really important to find a niche where we can contribute to that research. And it recognises early stage research. It convenes so that people can network and talk about that very early stage pure research. And also inspires young early career researchers so that they have the confidence and the tenacity to take pure science through to the more applied levels of it. And that is really important. And when we look back at some of the prizes that we have granted, they often come up 10 or 15 years before they're recognised by the Nobel Prizes, which is rather inspirational.
The Rank Prize Fund is rather like the Nobel Prize for Photonics. It recognises key achievements and persons behind those achievements at a very early stage. And it boosts, therefore, those scientists and recognises their achievements. And because of its prestige, it gave me a huge boost, of course, not just in my own confidence, but also in the recognition that it brought to the particular invention, the erbium doped fiber amplifier and high power laser, which followed. And that's very important because not everybody at an early stage of an invention recognizes its importance. And in my case, it was recognized even before it had become what it is today, which is the basis of the global internet. So it was very courageous of the Rank Prize Fund to do that, and they got it right.
I'm Shuji Nakamura. I received a Nobel Prize in Physics in 2014. I received a Rank Prize in '98 and with Professor Akasaki. I was so excited, so pleased, and it's a big incentive or motivation for me to work very hard. The impact of the LED and the laser diode is to save energy. Because in '98, at the time, all of lighting was a conventional lighting. So by replacing conventional lighting with LEDs, we can reduce a lot of energy. The biggest issue is global warming. We have to reduce energy consumption to overcome the global warming. So that's the reason I received the Rank Prize in 1998.
My work involves summarizing the way children grow. I do this by developing methods to construct growth charts. All new parents get given a red book, a personal child health record, which includes growth charts, which lets you see how well your child's growing. And this allows policymakers and parents to monitor the growth of their children so that policymakers can introduce interventions to improve health, doctors can treat their patients, and parents can be reassured that their child's growing well. I remember well the day that I received the letter telling me that I'd won the Rank Prize, and I was completely stunned by it because I knew exactly what it meant, as I had known about the Rank Prize for probably 20 years by then. The prestige of being awarded it just amazed me. I was just over the moon to be receiving a prize that had such illustrious previous winners like Elsie Widdowson, who is my particular hero.
Lord Rank was very successful in two major areas of science. Family were long established millers and established Rank Service McDougall, very, very successessful. His other business interest was Rank Films, Precision Instruments, Rank Xerox. So these two fundamental areas of nutrition and optoelectronics, he could see that there would be possibly a future in promoting and supporting these beyond his ordinary business in a charitable way to benefit mankind.
I'm Donald Bradley. I chair the Optoelectronics Committee. Optoelectronics is important for many aspects of the world in which we live. It contributes to energy generation. So for example, if we think about a solar cell, the optical energy comes from the sun, is converted into electrical power that we can use in our lives. Clearly that is a very important technology in the energy transition that is required to address the problems of climate change.
The Rank Nutrition Committee is the group of scientists who look after the interests of the nutrition research community, and we develop the program of work to support young and more experienced researchers across the UK who are carrying out work in a number of different areas related to nutrition. So this ranges from work on plant breeding all the way through to nutrition and human health. I first became involved with the Rank Prize Funds about 30 years ago when I was invited to participate in one of the mini symposiums that are held in Grasmere in the Lake District. It was a meeting about the gut microbiome, which is now a very hot topic, but 30 years ago wasn't nearly so popular. So a very nice example of where the Rank Prize Funds was looking to the future and spotting an important area.
I first became involved in the Rank Prize Fund when I was invited to one of their mini symposia as an early career researcher, probably 25 years ago. So attending that symposium was just an amazing experience, especially as an early career researcher. The opportunity to not just listen to the experts, but socialise with them, network with them, learn from them, was second to none. It was one of the most amazing conferences I'd been to. I've been to 2 mini symposia and they definitely directly and indirectly affected my research. Just to give an example of the direct interaction, there was a theoretician who I was desperate to meet and discuss her theories of why our materials were doing what they were doing. We had the opportunity to do that at the conference and we carried on to become collaborators and actually really good friends. So again, that networking, that exchange of ideas was just brilliant.
The atmosphere of the mini symposia is amazing. Everybody's on Christian name terms, no matter whether you're a first year PhD student or a Nobel Prize winner. So going as a junior investigator, you're meeting people who really, up until that point, were your gods in science. And actually, I remember at my very first symposium, I met Sir Philip Randall, who actually was my PhD supervisor when he did his PhD. So it was really seeing 3 generations of scientists all together.
I came to the University of Southampton in 1995, having met a number of researchers from the university here at the mini symposia. They were very interested in the research I was doing at the time, and they wanted me to come here to Southampton. So the fact that I moved, I think, can be traced directly to actually networking at some of those mini symposia in the early 1990s.
The Rank Prize Fund is really important for early career researchers because it provides a flexible source of independent funding that lets you do what you want with that money. So you could either use it to further your research by buying essential consumables or access to facilities, or even purchasing key equipment, which can be a real stepping stone for your future career. I was awarded the Rank Prize Fund for New Lecturers in 2016, which was right at the very start of my independent research career when I was based at the University of Leeds. It was really exciting to win the Rank Prize for New Lecturers because it gave me this huge confidence boost that not only did other people think what I was doing was worth doing, but that they were confident and excited by it enough to award money to help me do that. And also it gave me then the confidence that actually what I was doing was worthwhile and people wanted to support me in doing that. After winning the Rank Prize Funds for New Lecturers, I was able to conduct some really exciting and novel research, which resulted in 2 quite high impact papers being published. I think I can safely say that without the Rank Prize Funds award, I wouldn't be where I am today. It has accelerated the trajectory of my career to such an extent that I've been awarded much larger research grants and more often than I otherwise would have been. And this in turn has driven the speed and the impact of the research that I've been able to undertake. And that in turn has had a huge impact, not only in the agricultural industry, but also in the scientific community.
A few years ago, I was asked to join the Optoelectronics Committee, and I was really pleased to be asked that because I know the fantastic work they do. They helped me a lot when I was an early career researcher. Now to be on the committee and be able to give back and help people at their early career stage is a real privilege. I've always played a role in gender equality in physics, and I was awarded an OBE in 2009 for encouraging more women to do physics. The Rank Prize Committee's always, I think, been very aware of issues around equality and inclusion, and it's great now as a member of the committee to continue to make a difference, ensuring that we do our very best to reflect the demographics of the community in people who have a lot to offer to the optoelectronics area.
My name is Dr. Alexandra Ramadan and I work on perovskite solar cells. I became involved with the Rank Prize when I received the Research Visionary Award. I think the future of optoelectronics is going to be an incredibly exciting place to be. We have so many exciting new technologies and new semiconductors emerging and so many opportunities to develop technologies that can change the world for good. We're on the precipice of this climate emergency And things like the technologies I work on, new solar panels, are going to be incredibly important with ensuring that we can build a real sustainable future for all.
I think in the next 50 years, the Rank Prize Funds is going to be very topical as we face major challenges like climate change and improving food production, particularly because of their interest in nutrition. We don't need to just produce enough food to feed the world, we need to produce nutritious, high-quality food for everyone to have the best health.
My name is Dr. Grace Kangara. I specialize in micronutrient research and sustainable agriculture, and I'm a recipient of the Rank Prize Visionary Award. Receiving the Rank Prize Visionary Award gave me the confidence that I needed to continue with my work, and also it boosted my connections as Rank Prize announced my award. I know Rank has lots of connections for people like myself who are in crop nutrition research, so I see this as an opportunity for me to collaborate with other crop nutritionists. Going into the future, I can see the area of crop nutrition expanding as there is introduction of new technologies, such as the use of nanofertilizers, which are required in minute quantities, but also improve crop nutrition. There are challenges still. Climate change is having its effects on crop nutrition. Any increase in carbon dioxide is projected to result in a decline in crop nutrition. So that's why it is important that the field receives funding so that young scientists like myself can push this field forward and overcome the obstacles of climate change on crop nutrition.
I think it's a really exciting time to work in the field of chemical signalling in the rhizosphere and microbial interactions. We can bring together new disciplines such as predictive bioinformatics and genomics alongside chemical analysis to address some of the challenges faced by humanity, such as antimicrobial resistance and plant pathogens that are resistant to fungicides. Science is inherently more multidisciplinary nowadays, just like the mini symposia. And it's really a great way to start new collaborations and new research ideas and bring everything together in ways that weren't possible before.
I think it's a really exciting time. There are lots of problems that are new or existing where the Rank Prize Fund can continue to make a difference by supporting early career people, bringing scientists together and celebrating achievements.
These first 50 years have been incredibly important. The inspiration, the vision my grandfather had in 1972 has held true up till now, and if you think of the scientific developments in that time, it has been incredibly important. But what we have to look forward to is the next 50 years and how the Rank Prize Funds can support that recognition of the discovery of new science and how it can be applied, the convening around the great challenges and the barriers that we have in science and how we can break down those barriers, and also inspiring young early career students to think about the next 50 years. And that encapsulates my grandfather's vision of pushing the boundaries of science, ensuring research and development does provide some of those answers in the next 50 years. I hope you enjoyed that brief run through our work and some glimpses at the future through our early career researchers and the Visionary Awards. Tomorrow we'll be bringing together some of that network to look at key issues and some of the potential solutions facing research on the near horizon. However, I would now like to ask Professor Sir Peter Knight to come and present prizes. He's a familiar face here at the Institution of Engineering and Technology, but he has been recognised much more widely, especially by the Optical Society of North America as the first non-North American to become its president in 2004. His busy schedule has included being a member of the Council for the Royal Society, working on several advisory boards, including the UK Quantum Technology Initiative Strategy Advisory Board, the Photonics Innovative Manufacturing Centre, and the Winton Programme for the Physics of Sustainability at Cambridge. He has been recognised through many awards, not least the Royal Society Royal Medal, the Frederick Ives and the Herbert Walther Medals. And from this august institution, its highest award, the Faraday Medal. His distinguished career has focused on Imperial College, where he was Deputy Rector of Research and a member of Council. But he has also more widely travelled as a Humboldt Research Award holder at the University of Constance and a visiting scholar at the University of Texas in Austin, amongst many others. He has served as the Chief Scientific Advisor at the UK National Physics Laboratory, and he has also published many of the definitive papers around quantum optics. So we are especially grateful that you could step in at such short notice, Peter. I'm also aware that for several years he was the chair of the Defence Scientific Advisory Council at the Ministry of Defence, and as an ex-serviceman, I recognise that this Augean stable of Herculean labour was quite a lot more than he probably thought he was going to take on when he first started. Peter, welcome, and thank you for joining us at such short notice. Our first prize will be the Nutrition Prize, and I now ask Professor Peter Gregory to give the citation for the prize.
Thank you, Stuart. Professor Cathy Martin of the John Innes Centre has undertaken outstanding research that combines genetics and metabolism to provide new insights into plant development and metabolic processes. These insights have led to the biofortification of edible plant parts and the use of metabolic engineering to enhance foods nutritionally. Cathy's early research focused on understanding the regulation of flower pigmentation, specifically anthocyanin biosynthesis and diversity, and led to the identification of key genes regulating anthocyanin biosynthesis in plants using the genetic model Antirrhinum majus. This in turn resulted in the characterization of several transcription factors, including members of the MYB class, that coordinate the expression of genes encoding anthocyanin biosynthesis enzymes. The realization of how genes regulate this anthocyanin metabolism led to Cathy's research focusing on how concentrations of these important dietary phytochemicals might be increased in edible plant parts, especially in tomato. Anthocyanins have been associated with protection against a broad range of chronic diet-related human diseases, and in particular in promoting cardiometabolic and cognitive health. Expression of two transcription factors from Antirrhinum in tomato resulted in purple fruits, and the levels of anthocyanin were comparable to those in blackberries and blueberries. Antioxidant capacity of fruits was tripled, and when fed to cancer-susceptible mice, lifespan was increased by up to 30%. Later research showed that fruit-specific expression of the transcription factor at MYB12 not only increased flavonoid biosynthesis, resulting in up to 10% of the fruit dry weight comprising flavonols and hydroxycinamates, but also directly bound promoters of genes encoding enzymes of primary metabolism. This paved the way for an effective production system for many bioactives and high-value nutritional components. Her work with Sicilian blood orange, a natural citrus fruit with high levels of anthocyanins, characterized the mutations involved in anthocyanin accumulation and explained the reason behind their cold-dependent pigmentation, and hence the current limits on their cultivation. This understanding has been used to genetically modify other types of orange to produce high levels of fruit-specific anthocyanins in a wide range of growing conditions, facilitating their potential cultivation for juice production in many subtropical and tropical countries. Cathy's interest in phenolic compounds and plant metabolism more generally extends to the use of plants as natural medicines and how metabolites and their biofortification can be utilised to both improve shelf life of fruit and vegetables and human health. She has been a very powerful advocate and practitioner of the application of plant science for human health, and through her 2 spin-out companies has ensured a route to products for her research. It's my great pleasure now to ask Stuart and Peter Knight to present Cathy with her prize.
Presentation on her research that led towards the prize. Cathy.
Thanks very much for awarding me this prize, and it's really a very daunting challenge to have 15 minutes to try and explain why on earth we deserve it. But I want to start with this a statement that floats around on the internet that says that medicine is not healthcare, food is healthcare, and medicine is sick care. And I think this is very important to the way that I and all the people that work with me think about food, that if we want to be healthy for longer, then looking after our diets and improving the diets is very important. And I've put, I don't know whether you can see it, but in here there's some brown bread, so I hope Lord and Lady Rank would approve. So we've known for more than 50 years that fresh fruit and vegetables in the diet, a large proportion of them, is a strong foundation for a healthier, longer life. And yet we still don't eat enough of these compounds. Now, we also know that when we have diseases, we take medicines. And medicines are a little bit different to the way that food can benefit health. Medicines target a specific disease, and they're usually single chemicals targeting single mechanisms, whereas food tends to improve health by a much more generic process. There are multiple mechanisms. Now, there are some people that believe that we can put everything that's in a healthy diet into a pill, and then we would all be eating pills, which would be pretty dull, I think. And I'm not a big supplement fan. What I would say, though, is that even if you are unlucky enough to be diagnosed with a chronic disease and you're receiving medication for it, you can often improve the outcomes by focusing on the food that you eat and improving your diet. So food can also supplement or help you when you're sick, as well as making sure that you stay healthy for longer. And a very good example of this is type 2 diabetes, of course. So just to give you some data, I hope not too much data, but to give you some data for the importance of fruit and vegetables in the diet, these are data from Cancer Research UK from about 2011, and they show the incidence of people, of men and women, 150,000 surveyed each, diagnosed with cancer and their risk factors. So the lack of fruit and vegetables in the diet was the second biggest risk factor for all types of cancer in men, second only to tobacco. So it's really important. It's only the fifth biggest risk factor for women, and I like to think that that's because women are smarter than men and they eat more fruit because they eat more fruit. So one of the problems that we encountered, first of all, when we brought plant science to the study of nutrition and trying to understand all the wonderful compounds, chemicals, and materials that plants give us in our diet, one of the big problems is that it's very difficult to get evidence for dietary benefits from epidemiological studies. The fractions, the percentage changes are too small and people are too varying in their diets. And so we are more or less dependent on intervention studies in order to be able to say anthocyanins are good or carotenoids are good. And one of the big problems with intervention studies, and I use the example of the broccoli, which is known to be have health benefits in terms of glucosinolate content. When they first did the studies with broccoli, they compared them to a nutritionally equivalent control, which is peas. Now, I'm a plant scientist. I know that broccoli is nothing like the nutritional composition of peas. So broccoli is pretty much fiber and glucosinolates, and peas are rich in protein and starch, and also have quite a bit of lipid in them. So our first objective in trying to address understanding how phytochemicals could provide nutritional improvements was to try and develop a matched matrix control where we could do experiments. And we did this with anthocyanins, which are those pigments that you see, the blue, red, magenta pigments that you see in flowers, and things like red cabbage and red onions. And what we did was we engineered the production of anthocyanins in tomato to produce these beautiful purple tomatoes. And the way we did it meant that the tomatoes differ only by the anthocyanin content in the fruit. Otherwise, they are pretty much the same as the controls, but they're just loaded with those good anthocyanins. So in order to prove that there might be some, or to test whether there was some dietary benefit from the purple tomatoes, we undertook an experiment with animals and intervention studies using the red tomatoes as the matched matrix control. So these are the data. I hope you can see them. So the blue line shows the survival of cancer-prone mice. These are mice that lack the p53 tumor suppressor. And the blue line shows the survival of animals on a standard diet. And on average, p53 knockout mice live 140 days. So some live shorter, others live longer. The red line shows the survival of animals that were fed a red tomato supplemented diet. And it was pretty much the same as the survival of animals on the standard diet. So that meant that tomatoes themselves had no intrinsic benefits for the mice in terms of their life expectancy. But the purple line shows the survival of animals on the purple tomato supplemented diet. It was 10% of their diet by weight. And you can see that every mouse lived longer, significantly longer, simply by a nutritional intervention. So the numbers are shown here. And if you look at it, the average lifespan of animals on the purple tomato supplemented diet extended to 182 days from 142 days. And that's a 30% extension of lifespan without any chemotherapy, without anything to target the specific disease, simply by changing the nutritional composition and adding those phytochemicals in, we got this effect. So I think this is a fantastic result to have achieved, to show the importance of certain plant-based compounds there in the diet. And we can translate these to some indication of the benefits of anthocyanins in the diet for humans by doing conversion experiments. And we can calculate that 10% purple tomatoes for a mouse would be about 0.6 milligrams of anthocyanins a day. And that's about equivalent to about 125 milligrams a day for humans. Now, no one has ever been able to establish a recommended daily intake for anthocyanins, but I can tell you that 125 milligrams a day is way above what most people consume these days. So it's equivalent to 70 grams of blackberries a day. Now, when you think about that, it's possible, but it's not going to happen, is it really? They're expensive, they're seasonal, and got lots of pips, and you're probably not going to eat that. Then there's, it could be 3 purple peppers. and they're difficult to get hold of. You don't really see them in the shops, and that might be quite a lot of reflux with eating that many peppers. You could get them by eating purple flesh potatoes, but you'd need 3 of them. And despite it being a genetically modified food, it's just 2 of our purple tomatoes. And I think that is something that we might be able to aspire to. And I'm very pleased to be able to say that hopefully after 14 years of trying to get these commercialized, it looks like we will get regulatory approval for sale in the US. Not for sale here, but for sale in the US, because they do have a regulatory mechanism for commercialization of genetically modified products there. Okay, so as a result of a lot of work, which was summarized very nicely for me by Professor Gregory, I want to say that we have developed many, many different types of tomato which are enriched in polyphenols. These are the purple tomatoes, but we have them enriched in another anthocyanin, which is called pelargonidin, which is a more sort of crimson color. We have high flavanol tomatoes. We have high resveratrol tomatoes. That's a compound, a stilbenoid that's found in red wine and peanuts and is supposed to be one of the elixirs of life, leading to a longer age, lifespan. And we have high genistin tomatoes, and which are rich in a phytonutrient, or a phytoestrogen found in many legumes. And we have combinations of those anthocyanins and flavanols. And there's a demonstration upstairs in the reception by Eugenio Bitelli, who has developed most of these. You can see some of the varieties of colors that you can get. And we've been able to use these for comparative nutrition, so we can compare whether resveratrol is better than anthocyanins, or whether flavanols are better than anthocyanins, or whether combinations of them actually promote health against different diseases or disease models. So we can get a handle on how much we should be recommending to people. We can also make biofortified foods, which I've just mentioned, and we can make colorants, and we can also add them to cosmetics. So just before anyone thinks, wow, resveratrol, I just want to say that in our tomatoes, the content of resveratrol in one of our tomatoes is equivalent to that in 50 bottles of red wine. So don't try this at home, folks. It's not really possible to use red wine as the source of your resveratrol. Okay, as a result of all of this, we have been funded to set up a Wellcome Trust-funded PhD program, because, of course, all of this work requires collaboration with people in experimental medicine. We're plant scientists. All we can do is make the foods and then try them. So the Odysseus program is really now laying the foundation for training a new generation of nutritionists. Hopefully, Lord and Lady Rank would approve of that. And they're very interested in plants, food and health from crop to clinic. And I want to just acknowledge Ian Clark at UEA, who is the co-director of this program. And it's a really exciting thing, which I hope goes some way to address the rather critical MRC review of how nutrition is taught in the UK from 2018. One thing that one has to be very wary of is this statement by eco-warrior and poet Wendell Berry that the food industry pays no attention to health, and people are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. And one of the big challenges that we have in the future is to try and get the food industry to believe in the health benefits without necessarily increasing the cost of healthy foods. So what I want to finish with is just a description of some research that we did very recently. It was published just last month, and this was to engineer provitamin D content in tomatoes using a new breeding technique called gene editing. And this work has, this is something for the optoelectronics people. This is moldy imaging of a tomato. I hope you can see it here. So this is the wild type tomato, and you can see there's no provitamin D3 in tomatoes normally, but when we mutate an enzyme that converts provitamin D3 to cholesterol, then we can get very high levels of accumulation of provitamin D3. There's even higher levels in the leaves, and I'll come back to that in a moment. So this is the mutants that we created, and this is the wild type level in leaves. And very importantly, in this gene editing step, where there was no effect on yield of the tomato plants, which is really important in terms of making a commercializable product. So what we've got as outcomes from this research, which received a lot of publicity, was that we've got a research tool where we can assess the role of dietary vitamin D3 in disease. And of course, D3 deficiency is associated with depression, dementia, and many types of internal cancer as well. We have tomatoes with the potential to deliver vitamin D3 at levels equivalent to 1 tomato is equivalent to 28 grams of tuna, which is not bad and this is suitable for vegetarians or vegans. We have a trait which could be introduced easily into any elite variety without the need for introgression. And most importantly, I think in terms of that food system concept, it's a means of using the tomato waste as well to give the leaves, the green fruit, and the pomace to produce vitamin D3 and potentially provitamin D supplements. So we can extract the waste products in a sort of circular bioeconomy and give the producers something back. Instead of increasing the price of the tomatoes that are provitamin D enriched, we can give them some net value from the waste products. So I want to finish by thanking, huge thanks to, just unbelievably large numbers of people, and I haven't included all the people who have worked with me on these programs, but most importantly, Eugenio Butelli, who's Mr. Tomato, and who has this demonstration upstairs. And he has also led the work that was referred to on citrus. So that's, a whole other ball game. Anne Edwards, who's worked with me for more than 30 years, also here tonight. And we have undertaken so many fantastic scientific adventures and also travel adventures here on safari with us. Dario, and Angelo, Aurelia, Antonietta, lots of Italian collaborators, Ronan Broad, who was from New Zealand. Of course, John Clark, who's also here in the audience, who's always kept me in line to understand that it's no good just doing research, you've got to get a product out there as well. And Helen Girardello, who gives me the veneer of organization in terms of administration. And finally, Ji Lee, who also has a little demonstration upstairs who's done all the work on vitamin D3 in tomatoes. And I want to finish by thanking you for awarding us the Rank Prize for Nutrition.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I'd now like to ask Professor Donald Bradley to come up to do the citation for our second award, the Optoelectronic Award.
Thank you very much, Stuart. So I'm going to talk about perovskite semiconductors, which sounds a long way away from the last talk that we heard. But actually in the reception outside, I was talking to one of our prize winners, Michael Gretzel, and he happened to comment that anthocyanins were one of the pigments that he used in some of his dye-sensitized solar cells. So actually we're not so far apart as might first be seen. So the 2022 and 50th anniversary Rank Prize for Optoelectronics is awarded to 7 scientists from across the globe for their discovery and development of all-solid-state perovskite semiconductor solar cells. Perovskite semiconductors are novel layered materials based on compounds of the formula ABX3, where A is an organic molecule in an ionic state, B a metal, and X one of several halides, typically chlorine, bromine, or iodine. As such, they are hybrid organic-inorganic structures, and their properties are very widely tunable through a variation in composition that leads to energy gaps that span the important visible and near-infrared spectral regions that are of strong interest for many optoelectronic applications. The perovskite crystal structure, after which they are named, was originally identified for the naturally occurring mineral calcium titanate, which was first found in the Ural Mountains and named after a Russian mineralogist, Lev Perovsky. Other examples of these crystal structures, barium titanate and strontium titanate, are of interest for a variety of different applications. So strontium titanate, for instance, is used as in solid oxide fuel cells as a mixed electron-ion conductor and for its high dielectric constant. The prize winners developed these perovskite hybrid organic-inorganic semiconductors for solar cell applications and took their work through several challenging iterations, leading to a very rapid increase in efficiency from initial values of less than 4% to current values that are comparable to the 26% efficiency typical for the incumbent silicon solar cell technology. The work of Professor Michael Gretzel, Dr. Akihiro Kojima, Dr. Michael Lee, Professor Tsutomu Tom Miyazaka, Professor Namgu Park, Professor Sang-il Suk, and Professor Henry Snaith has had a profound impact on the development of materials for solar cell generation, which is, as we heard in the film earlier, a critical component of the energy transition that is very urgently required to reduce greenhouse emissions by moving away from the burning of fossil fuels as a primary source of energy. This transition is essential to tackling global climate change and is a transition that must be made to happen rapidly and equitably for all nations. Together, the recipients of the Rank Prize for Optoelectronics ensured, through their collective expertise in chemistry, material science, physics, and engineering, that perovskite semiconductors have emerged as the main complement to silicon for solar energy generation. The research interest that they generated in these materials within the global academic community and the pace of adoption of this technology by industry have been truly remarkable by any standards. Much more rapid, for instance, than the development of organic light-emitting diodes, which I know a little bit about, and also the development of organic semiconductor photovoltaic materials that are now really struggling to catch up. This academic and industrial interest focuses on both perovskites as a standalone technology capable of performing at a level that is comparable to silicon, and importantly as a partner to silicon in tandem solar cells that offer overall efficiency gains, together with additional benefits for use, for instance, in hot climates. So, for example, dropping off, they can address the drop-off in silicon cell efficiency with increasing temperature. And as we move inexorably into the era of global multi-terawatt solar energy generation, the continued pace of solar panel deployment will be significantly impacted by these further cost reductions that are afforded by the efficiency gains that are being made to happen. In addition, solution processing of perovskites may also offer new paradigms in high-throughput manufacturing with the potential for additional cost reductions. And as a consequence, the work of our 7 prize winners is set to ensure that perovskite solar cells will play a major role in the future of solar power generation. The Rank Prize Optoelectronics Committee is delighted to recognize the outstanding achievement of these 7 individuals, including 2 whose work was performed as early career researchers. Their collective work is an excellent example of fundamental contributions to physical science being rapidly and successfully translated into a new technology. That technology is poised to address a truly urgent societal challenge linked to climate change. Please join me in congratulating our 7 prize winners.
Secondly, Dr. Akihiro Kojima. Third, Dr. Michael Lee. Fourth, Professor Tsumo Miyasaka. And next, Professor Nam Gyu Park. And next, Professor Sang Il Seok. And finally, Professor Henry Snaith. The prize is going to have 2 presentations, firstly by Dr. Michael Gretzel, and then followed by Professor Henry Snaith. So, Michael, if I could ask you to lead off, the prize winners slip back down, and Henry, probably if you sit down and then come back up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart. It's a pleasure, honored to present the work of our 2 Korean colleagues. And at the very outset, I'd like to congratulate my fellow laureates on their nomination and election to the Rank Prize, a prestigious award. I'm very happy to receive that. So very briefly, in the next 7.5 minutes, I will describe to you the contribution of the 3 of us, Professor Nam-Gyu Park, Professor Song-Il Suk, and my own contribution. And Nam-Gyu told me that he was inspired to work on perovskites by a lecture that Tommy Yasaka gave at a conference in Switzerland, in St. Gallen, that I organized actually on dye-sensitized solar cells. And so Nam-Gyu had his PhD done in France on oxide perovskites. And so he became interested to apply those materials instead of the sensitizers, molecular sensitizers, that we used to employ for dye-sensitized solar cells. And so that led to a paper that appeared in 2011, and where he described a version that was superior in efficiency and stability to Tommy Yasaka's initial result. But Nam-Gyu told me that the editor of the journal asked him once, you never got any citations for this work, and so nobody's interested. So that was true. Until in 2012, there was the breakthrough of solid-state version, which kind of built on the solid-state dye-sensitized solar cell version, a scaffold of Ti2 nanoparticles that was infiltrated by the perovskite, and the hole conductor we had been used for dye-sensitized solar cells, this bio-hole conductor. So the enormous progress in efficiency that moved up to over 9%, and we were very fortunate to be associated with this work and at the early stage. And so the device that was that was produced was stable, and it's in contrast to the liquid junction system, and it had this high efficiency. So from there on, you can see here's the 4 papers in 2012. Henry will talk about the other laureates' contribution, and the exponential increase in the number of publications, and yeah, so this work has stimulated an enormous research interest, and by now the efficiency is up at over 25%. And so the work has also been expanding to other fields like the imaging, X-ray imaging, and perovskite light emitting diodes. I move to Song-Il Sok's work. Professor Sok has very clear contributions to the field. He was first to start on polymeric hole conductors. So until then, the solid-state disensitized solar cell used a molecular hole conductor, this biorometite material. And so, and also the notion developed that actually the perovskite was not only coating the particles that you see here, this coating. No, perovskite was actually able to infiltrate and of course still be active. And that was a big advantage. And finally, the capping layer is now the major contribution for the light harvesting activity. So these systems evolved from particle sensitized mesoscopic TI2 films to the infiltrated pillar structure, and finally a kind of a multi-layer structure. But still, today's cells use very often this mesoscopic electron selective layer. And yeah, I should actually comment and congratulate our colleague, Professor Sok, for his outstanding work on developing the anti-solvent method that precipitates the perovskite out of solution in a very controlled way. So he has been leading the efficiency over a long time, actually holding the world record efficiency of 25.7%. That's a certified value, and so we can take it for granted. Finally, our own work. I mentioned already that we were very fortunate to participate in the collaboration with Nambu Park. We have, there was a history to this device. I mentioned the solid-state dye-sensitized, the dye-sensitized device itself, which is now being commercialized and products are out for sale. And so I should mention that even today's devices, this is a device that gives over 25% efficiency, still reminiscent of the solid-state dye-sensitized. So I'm telling you that because I'm proud that the concept has lasted so long. So we have these nanoparticles of Ti2 or tin oxide, and they are the electron selective contact, and then perovskite. And then of course, there have been inventions like these, the passivating layers, octaluminum iodide. And yeah, so a lot of research has been done to get from the 3% to the 25%. And here it just shows you the example that we infiltrate. You can infiltrate by this two-step method we developed. We had sequential deposition. The paper well received. It got over 9,000 citations. Why was that? Well, the method is very flexible. You first infiltrate the precursor PbI2, that's the lead iodide, and then you convert it to the perovskite with the methyl ammonium iodide. And that has a volume increase, a huge volume increase. And so you fill the pores by this conversion reaction. And you get actually also a capping layer formed on top. So, yeah, so we have been very fortunate to collaborate with groups on the important items. Also, our own work has resulted in some key discoveries, like the multi-cation perovskites that use, instead of just one methyl ammonium cation, they use a formamidinium, which has better optoelectronic properties than the other cations. But the material is unstable. It converts to useless form at room temperature, the yellow phase. So how do you stabilize? Well, we found out that just adding another cation, so mixing the cations, stabilized it. And so emerged from these studies a triple cation system, which is now being widely employed. For example, it's used in the tandem cells with silicon. And we also discovered, together with Professor Meyer from the MPI Stuttgart, that these materials have ionic conduction, and that ionic conduction is largely enhanced by light illumination. And that created a very important new, what should I say, domain of research for the perovskite system. And lately we have introduced the quantum dots as electron layer. And we realized efficiency is not all. We have to get extremely stable system, 25 years outdoor life. And so here is a cell that has really very good stability, 2,000 hours. This is under full light, simulated sunlight, maximum power point tracking, so it delivers its maximum power, and it's high temperature. And so it's combined stress, is so-called ISOs, L2 test, and this for over 2,000 hours. So this is the device we are planning to develop in a product, and we have a production plant under development with partners, Turkey and Singapore, Ifet, Veda, Tolga, and Damon. And Ifet and Tolga are actually in the audience today, and you can talk to them about their project. So the device has a carbon electrode, back electrode, and it uses copper thiocyanate as a whole conductor. So with that, I like to finish by, first of all, thanking my coworkers that have contributed so much to our progress, but not only, also our family. I think all our families, I mentioned my family, my wife Carol, our children, Chauncey, Amy, and Lillian. And in the audience is my son, Chauncey, and his son, Matthew. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Michael, thank you very much. Now I'd ask Professor Henry Snaith to come up and have a follow-on on that.
Well, thank you very much. And I should say it's a massive honor to be awarded this prize along with my colleagues in the field. And it's fantastic to see so many people here as well to celebrate it. So I'm going to try to give you a sort of idea of some of the developments I've done myself, my group, and specifically Mike Lee, who's the first student working on this with me, and Akira Kojima and Tomi Osaka from Toan University. So this is sort of like a complementary development of perovskites, if you like, compared to what Michael previously showed. I'm not going to tell you what perovskites are. Thank you, Donald, for saving me a few minutes there. But I will start on some of the earliest work. So Michael mentioned that some of the earliest work was in 2007, and Akira Kojima really hasn't aged very much, actually. He's done very well. So he was known, the first time I visited Toan University, everyone was very excited in the labs, and they were talking about Jack's guy. And it's because he published in the Journal of American Chemical Society, which was an excellent achievement. But I'll just start on the research. So it did start quite a few years ago, in fact, from 2006 even. Akira Kojima working in Tomi Osaka's group, and also with collaboration from Yasu Shiraya, who he previously worked with, I think for your PhD, is that correct? Or master's, sorry, you did, yeah. And they were working on taking these metal halide perovskites, specifically methylammonium lead triiodide, methylammonium lead tribromide, and integrating them into what were then dye-sensitized solar cells. So it's the porous TiO2 that's sandwiched between an electrolyte and two conducting plates, and a dye, which is sometimes cyanine dyes or various other dyes, is stuck onto the surface of the porous TiO2. And Kojima was seeing if he could use these perovskite crystals. They started at 0.37% efficiency in their first conference. And in fact, over a period of 3 years, they managed to ramp them up to around 3 or 4% efficiency. These were actually really quite good for new materials integrated into a solar cell. But the primary challenge was that when you assembled these cells, the electrolyte that's typically used dissolved the perovskite over a short period of time. So they had to be assembled and measured quite quickly. And the structure was, as Michael illustrated, these little perovskite crystals that sensitized the TiO2. So they're working very much like a pigment sensitized device with the sunlight absorbed in these little perovskite crystallites, photoexciting electrons that are transferred into a metal oxide, where the long-range transport takes place through this porous TiO2 electrode. So I visited, I don't know if this is going to work, I hope it will. Is this a touch screen? No, sorry. So I visited Tuan University in 2009, and we had a little mini symposium, and Tom Miyasaka gave a talk. At the time, I was working on lead sulfide nanocrystals to use them as solar absorbers, and they were pretty tricky. You had to spend about 2 days synthesizing these quantum dots, and I did this myself, and at the end of it, I had 25 milligrams, and then I had to coat them 10 times on top of the electrode to get enough in there to make a solar cell. There was also about 0.3% efficiency. And I saw, is this going to play? Yes, it is. So I saw this video, this precise video from Tom Miyasaka, and this is coating methylammonium lead tribromide with a UV light on it into a porous metal oxide scaffold, and suddenly it starts glowing while it's spin coating. And that glow is the formation of these little nanocrystals, these little quantum dots. So that one process represented about 5 days' work for me previously. I was sold, and I wanted to definitely start working on perovskites. I then forgot about it for about a year, and fortunately got a grant with a joint grant between EPSRC and the Japanese Science Technology Agency with Taku Murakami, who was also a PhD student, past PhD student of Tom Miyasaka, and had a faculty position in Tuan University in an adjacent lab to Tom. So Mike volunteered to go to Japan. It was obviously a pretty hard decision during his PhD. And he found that there were quite a few nice places in Tokyo to go and drink some beer. Now, the story I was told at first, these are our notes that we started to make the solar cells with and the solar cell materials. And unfortunately, by the time Mike had got to Japan, Akira Kojima had moved from the university to PECCEL and no longer was there to help him do the science. And I was told that he managed to find him in a bar in Tokyo, and these are the notes that we started with. And it's a much better story than the reality is Taku cornered him in the corridor because the lab was next to the company, and they wrote down the notes. But I prefer to stick with the tale I was first told because it's more elaborate. But you can propagate whichever myth you want after this. But Mike came back to Japan. They did try to make some devices in Japan. Unfortunately, none of them worked. But Mike came back and was mixing all different perovskites together and basically making these solid-state sensitized solar cells. And we got up, first batch of devices he made was 6% efficiency. Our lab record at the time was 5% with the dyes. So this was like, wow, this stuff really works. And then we started to suspect through studying the optoelectronic properties of these devices that we were getting some transport, some electron transport in the perovskite as well as in the TiO2. So this meant that this material that was acting to absorb light also was possibly conducting charge. So we made some dummy devices where we replaced this conductive TiO2 with an insulating wide-gap material, aluminium oxide. And in this one batch of devices that Mike did, I might be elaborating here, I don't think I am. He made 60 different solar cells. 58 of them had TiO2 in, and 2 of them had alumina in, because we just wanted to have a couple to do some measurements on. Of the 58, the highest efficiency we got was 7%, which we were pretty happy with. In fact, there was a world record for the solid-state dye cell at the time, held by the gentleman in the corner there, that was 7.3%, and we were very happy because we were about to beat him. And it's not always competition, but a bit of healthy competition is always good. But actually, then of these 2 devices with alumina, one was 9.8% efficiency and one was 10.8. So this was a real, if you ever have a light bulb moment when you're doing research, this was a moment that was very surprising and we were very excited about. And the reason they were more efficient, I'm showing a current voltage curve here, which is how we measure a solar cell, is that the voltage at which the current gets to 0, this is what we call the open circuit voltage. It's the maximum voltage a photovoltaic cell can generate, suddenly jumped up by 200 millivolts, 0.2, 0.25, 0.3 volts. And that was really quite outstanding. the sort of voltages these cells were generating were very similar to the voltage you get from a gallium arsenide solar cell, which is made of really crystalline, ordered material. Unlike the disordered materials we're used to using, where we thought they'd be cheaper, we never thought they'd compete on efficiency. So already by observing this high voltage, we knew there was a very high chance this stuff was going to be really efficient very quickly. I don't know how well you can see this, but the next step we made was the leap or the question, do we need this alumina at all? Do we need a scaffold? We actually found we could just process thin film devices. This middle bit's just a solid polycrystalline perovskite absorber layer. And the surprise here was that at the time, we thought that we could either make solar cells out of really crystalline, high-quality materials like crystalline silicon or 3-5 semiconductors like gallium arsenide, and they could be efficient, or we could make solar cells out of low-cost, solution-processed, easily processed, low-temperature processed materials, but they'd never work just as a solid single absorber. We needed to introduce some form of structure like the porous intercalated network you have for the dye-sensitized solar cell or the bulk heterojunction mixture of NMP-type conducting polymers we have for organic cells. We thought that was the status quo. And then suddenly we've got this material. We can spin coat, it crystallizes within a few seconds at room temperature, and we've got a solar cell that works really, really well. So that was a paradigm shift that really blew us away, and we suddenly realized we were dealing with a new beast, a different type of semiconductor that we didn't have in our hands previously. Donald mentioned tandem cells and the tunability of these materials. One thing that subsequently prevailed and that we've tried to develop is perovskite cells that absorb light in different regions of the spectrum. And the reason, for those of you not initiated into photovoltaics, which is probably at least half the audience, the sunlight comes in a range of different colors, going from blue or ultraviolet through to red, and then into the infrared. Blue photons carry much higher energy than red photons that carry much higher energy than infrared. And basically, if you absorb this all in a single semiconductor material, you throw away a lot of this energy as thermalization, as heat. By stacking solar cells on top of each other, we can capture more energy from different regions of the spectrum. And there's been a lot of work that we've been involved in and that others have been involved in multi-junction perovskite on silicon, where the efficiency is now actually approaching 30%, and also triple junction or further junction cells. This is all perovskites where we've tuned the band gap to have a 1 EV, a 1.5 EV, and a 2 electron volt band gap material. Now, these are also stepping up in efficiency. At least a tandem cell has now been certified by a group in China at 28% efficiency. So I haven't said what we've calculated the efficiency limits for these. Practical efficiency, this should really get up towards 35–40% efficiency, and likewise for these multi-junction cells here. So we're only halfway on this efficiency path. In fact, the tandems, multi-junctions will take us a lot further. I'll try to be quick, because I'm sure I've gone over time. I told you about this step from 0.8 volts to 1 volt. A lot of the losses in solar cells come from defects and traps and disorder, and they come from what we call charge recombination, so positive and negative charges recombining where we don't want them to recombine. And we can engineer the devices to basically try to get rid of these defects, try to stop the charges recombining at interfaces that we don't want them to. And this is an example of a solar cell that's 1.8 EV band gap. This is what we need for our tandem cell, for our perovskite tandem. It's giving 1.35 volts open circuit. Now, by the time they get to this sort of quality, they start shining. So this is red light coming from the solar cell when we're just scanning the current voltage curve. And this actually shows you how the, I don't know how well you can see it, but this is just scanning from 0 to 4 volts, and you can see it starts getting very bright. And in fact, this electroluminescence is pretty stable as well. And with a peak electroluminescence of 3%, this is actually pretty good for a wide bandgap solar cell. And ultimately, LEDs, like organic LEDs in this planar structure or in a non-textured, non-optically textured structure, actually top out at about 20–25%. So there'll be a time when these perovskite solar cells actually work just as well as a solar cell as an LED. The only difference will be that the band of light over which they absorb or emit is tuned to either be in the visible for displays or in the infrared or wherever we want it for the maximum efficiency of these tandem cells. I'm just going to say a couple of words about the commercialization. From my perspective, I started a spin-out company, Oxford Photovoltaics, that we've grown to about 130 employees. We have 2 sites, one in Oxford that's taking the technology from the scientific developments and making it industrially worthy in terms of stable enough, efficient enough, and made through processes that are manufacturable. And then we've got a site in Germany, in Brandenburg, where we've got a pilot line, and we're ramping up a production line to produce full-scale cells and modules. And through all this process, we've been filing a lot of patents from the earliest days to try to enable the exploitation and the commercialization of this technology in the industry. And this is a slide from Tom Miyasaka, which is related to his interest and many other people's interests in these materials for space application. So there's a whole range of applications. These crystalline materials are quite soft. They're actually incredibly hard to radiation. So they can take a high dose of protons, for instance, without them affecting them. And this is part of their defect tolerance. You can knock ions out and put them somewhere else, and they sort of reform in a high-ordered manner inside the cell. So they may find really good applications in space. And I haven't listed everyone here, but on behalf of myself and Tom Miyasaka and Akira Kojima and Mike Lee, I'll thank all our collaborators that we've worked with. There's been many from all over the world, our research groups, and also funders. And thank you very much, and thank the Rank Prize tremendously for honouring us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Henry, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation, bringing it all together, and for me, not a scientist, but bringing it from the pure science into application at the end, really brought it home what the value and the respect we have for your science and where you've taken it through, for all the team on the perovskite. So thank you very much for that. It's a little bit cheeky because I asked him at very, very short notice, but Stephen Knight has very kindly said he'll draw together, summarize, and add a few words on the context of research at the moment to bring together the end of the evening. We're hugely grateful that he's come here and has volunteered to talk. But thank you very much, Peter.
Well, it's unfortunate that Adrian Smith is not able to be with us. I've worked on an infinite number of committees with Adrian, so I get a kind of sense of what he might say. Firstly, the Rank Prize Funds has been an extraordinary vehicle for encouraging great science. And we've heard already today of 2 incredible areas in nutrition and in optoelectronics. The Rank Prizes that we've heard about are a way of recognizing extraordinary distinction in doing great science that has an impact. But in addition, the Rank Prize funds a number of other things. We heard earlier about the symposia. I've attended a number of Rank Prize Fund symposia. I really love Grasmere, and it's a great opportunity to go and meet with your colleagues and friends. The Rank Prize Funds symposia are a good example of democratizing science, where young people and world-famous research leaders gather together in a kind of collegiate harmony of exchanging ideas. So the Rank Prize Funds, I think, has been a great enabler of the ecosystem. It's hugely valued by the community. And as we've heard, the 2 examples that we've had today really affect global challenges that are really, really important to us. In optoelectronics is the enabler of so much of the world economy. And on a parochial note for the UK, optoelectronics, sometimes called photonics, generates more for the GDP of the UK than pharmaceuticals. Not a great deal more, but it's an incredible achievement in 1,600 companies with a gross value added per employee, which is over 3 times the national average. But what does it do? What does it do in terms of global challenges? It really addresses an area of accelerating concern at the moment, which is energy security, the way that we actually use our energy, how we use information using optoelectronics around the world in an energy efficient way. And we've heard already from our second run of prize winners how photovoltaics can really begin to address energy security a really amazingly important way. The global challenges we face at the moment, for example, through the war in Ukraine, has really focused our attention on that. But it's not the only area, because we also see food security as a major issue of something that we need to focus on, in part accelerated by our experiences with the war in Ukraine. So the idea of trying to do something about health rather than sickness, and I really did note what Kathy said about this. And Kathy had a wonderful phrase that I think we're all going to try and steal, the elixir of life. I think I'm going to borrow that one, where nutrition and food security is really important for us. Next thing I wanted to mention, really, and I know that Adrian would have said that today if he were here, is science is a transformer of the world, but it's as a consequence of international activity, of people working together around the globe to really address some of the major problems that we have to face. And we've seen examples today from the optoelectronics community of a collaboration across the globe, really to address these really important issues of how we harvest energy in a sustainable way. I know that Adrian would have stressed the contribution of the UK to world science in terms of openness and collaboration, something that we worry about a great deal in the UK at the moment, as we move to try to understand how we have a place to play in world science. I want to conclude with one personal tribute to John Selborne. My engagement with John was through a number of areas of encouraging science. John was a tremendous ambassador for science. He's been extraordinarily important for us in not only being a great scientist himself, but really being able to express the importance of science to our political masters, and we really do miss him. So all in all, looking at what the Rank Prize Funds has achieved and the exemplars we've had today, I think it's been extraordinary. So I would like you all to please congratulate all of our prize winners today and the Rank Prize Funds for supporting them.
Thank you very, very much, Peter. Peter, thank you very, very much. We are now drawing to the end of the presentations. There's a reception up on the third floor for everyone to go up to. I'm going to ask the prize winners to stay behind just for a few minutes so we can have some photographs with Peter, and then we'll come and join you for the reception up there. In drawing to a close on the presentation stage, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming to join us. We've seen over today where COVID can loom in the horizon and cast a little bit of a shadow, but it's been hugely touching that you've all made the effort to come here and join us and hear about two fascinating facets of research summarized so well by Peter. And I'd like to say a big thank you for the teams, both the two scientific teams, optoelectronics and nutrition, for all the work they do to actually enable these presentations, to do the research, and sometimes make those very difficult judgments on who we think should receive that recognition, and also for the support that they give young researchers. And tomorrow, we're really looking forward to Visionary Awards, where we look at discussing the future, the near horizon, and where some of these things might become apparent again. Peter, thank you very, very much for presenting the prizes. Ladies and gentlemen, up to the third floor, where there are some exhibitions and some poster boards to explain some of the further work, and look forward to talking then. Thank you all very much.